Good morning, everyone. It is wonderful to see you here. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to join us. This is episode number 22 of the Hopenning. The Hopenning is a place where hope happens if you open your heart, open your mind, and you'll open your soul to it. And I am Fran. I am a part-time rapid transformational therapist, practitioner, and I live in Northern Alberta, Canada. My full-time job is elementary school teacher, which I've been doing for 33 years. And my beautiful and very talented co-host is Marina. And Marina lives in Calgary, Alberta, Canada, where she is a full-time rapid transformational therapist practitioner. She is also very recognized as an opera singer, and her mom says that she was born singing, and I believe it. She's amazing. And so today we have a very special guest, and her name is Julie Moore, and she comes to us from Florida. And Marina, would you please introduce Julie to us?
Thank you so much, Fran, and hi, everybody. Julie, thank you so much. A few years ago, I was in a writer's incubation program, and Julie was part of the group, and I was in one of the Zoom meetings when she discussed her book. She was still writing it, and I got off the call and I said to my husband, we need to buy this book. And I think I was one of the first people who bought it off Amazon the moment it was released. So let me tell you a little bit more about Julie. Julie Moore found herself stung by the experience of painful deaths of multiple family members, both human and animal. And looking for a way to soften her own grieving process, she had the inspiration after a meditation session to write a book to soothe and guide herself and other pet owners who are deeply troubled by the physical loss of their beloved companions. With an MA in counselor education and educational leadership, and as a certified counselor, she has spent the past 25 years guiding students to success as they prepare for adulthood. One source of Julie's joy is breeding and showing champion basset hounds under her kennel name Zephyr Moore Bassets. Julie is a lover of all things dog, a cup of coffee, on a porch overlooking mountain views, deep conversation with friends, great food, and spending time with her husband, Gary, and their 5 basset hounds. So you can read Julie on the Pet Soul Book on Instagram, the Pet Soul Book on Facebook, juliemooreauthor.com, their website, Pet Soul Grief and Loss Support Group on Facebook. So Julie, very, very welcome here today. It's an honor to have you. So why don't you hit the floor running and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, thank you so much. That was a wonderful introduction. I'm so honored and grateful to be here with you folks this morning. I mean, we're on opposite sides of the world, it feels like, me down in Tampa, Florida, and you guys up in Canada. I'm just so delighted to be speaking with you and also your community, the Hopenning. It's exciting. Yeah, as you mentioned in my biography, I, as a counselor and somebody that just is so connected with the animal world, one day I was meditating in my chair, and after meditation, I just had an inspired thought that I've always kind of wanted to write a book, but never thought I would. And, you know, what would I write about? That type of thing. But this inspired thought said, why don't you try to help people who are grieving the loss, the physical loss of their pets? And part of that inspiration, I believe, came to me because I had several conversations with dear friends of mine who, one of them said to me, my dog passed away 3 years ago, and every morning I still wake up and crying over the loss of the pet. And I had had several experiences. I've had dogs since I was 13 years old and other pets. And I've had experiences where I also grieve. Everybody grieves differently. We'll probably talk about that a little bit. But I've been able to move through that process of grief a little more gently and easily, and you might even say more quickly, because of some of the spiritual beliefs that I have regarding the death process, the fact that we're spirits having a human experience, And one of the silver threads through the book has been, because I believe that we're human, or we're spiritual beings having a human experience, why not our pets perhaps having a spiritual existence, but also having a canine or feline, avian, equine experience? And if that's true, then maybe our pets aren't lost. Of course, we experience the physical loss of our pets, but their spiritual essence remains with us. So the thought is, if I can understand that, if that resonates with me, and perhaps even connect to that, there may be a gentler way of thinking about the death of our pet than just they're gone. So part of the Pet Soul book is, it's a text, but it's also a workbook, and it's a memory book, it's a resource book, and it helps people go through all the various things that they may experience, whether it's guilt or questions about when the right time is, and those types of things, and help them feel like that whatever they decide and all of the feelings that they're feeling, they're all normal. But perhaps can I help you get through that process, which is so horribly painful, in a little more gentle way? And maybe you're not grieving with these painful feelings. And as therapists, the emotions and the pain associated with some memories, if you can release that, then you still have the memories, but without the pain that accompanies it. And then it's more of a joyful, I experienced life with that animal, and wasn't that wonderful, instead of being so emotionally distraught over the loss.
And that's absolutely amazing, Julie. It's so relatable. We lost our dog, Celtic, in 2015. And my brother is an artist, and he made an amazing painting of Celtic, life-size, that's hanging in our bedroom. And there are times, especially my husband, like Khaleesi is my soulmate. Celtic was Wayne's soulmate. And there are times still now, so many 7 years later, that Wayne would still tear up when he talks about him or thinks of memories of him. So, that connection with these animals are just, I always say it's the unconditional love we get from them.
I'm so glad you said that. Prior to you saying that, that's exactly what I was going to say. I've always felt like the connection we have with our pets is the purest form of unconditional love.
Yeah.
I think even human beings have difficulty with that. We say, we unconditionally love each other, but there's still some judgment and, difficulty because of some of our own issues. But when you wake up in the morning, and I mentioned this in the book, and your hair is on one side, and maybe you have makeup stains from the night before, and you have bad breath, they still love you regardless. They're still happy to see you. And there's this feeling for me that they are models for us as human beings. And because a lot of people don't have that experience, or haven't had that pure experience with unconditional love that they get with their pets, that's where that difficulty in moving on comes from, I believe. So
yes, for sure.
Yeah,
I always think of Khaleesi. When Khaleesi was a puppy, Celtic was still around, and she was extremely naughty. She was just a nightmare. We had a niece visiting us from Vancouver in wintertime, and one morning when we got up, her winter boots was torn to shreds. There was nothing left. I still have pictures of that. And everybody was always saying, "Oh, you're such a naughty puppy." And then one day I said, it was right outside this door, I sat and I looked her in her eyes and I said to her, "Khaleesi, I see you. And from this day on, I'm going to call you a wonderful, fantastic dog." And it's like she connected eyes with me. And that's when our bond was formed. And I still get that look from her. And she changed. Now, one thing I told the family, we don't call her a naughty puppy anymore. She's just a wonderful, phenomenal dog. And she really grew into that. So it's just amazing. So to me, Julie, that is the proof that I do have a soul. Definitely.
Oh,
You know, Julie, I wonder, as we talk here, you know, humans kind of see each other on a three-dimensional level. You and I and Marina now are talking on a two-dimensional level. But I wonder if pets, they see you on a four-dimensional or a five-dimensional level where they actually don't just see the physical, they see the spiritual, and they see, you know, they don't see the bad. And, you know, like they see, we've all got baggage, we've all got stuff, and the pet sees through that. They cut through that, and they see you as you're in your innocence, right? Pets are amazing that way. And, you know, like as Marina, you're saying about your dog Khaleesi, and I had two dogs like that. They were long, both of them lived a long time. One lived to be 13 or 14, and the other one lived to be 14 and a half. And so that's almost 30 years, right? With just two humans, I mean, or two dogs. And so you get to know the dog really well, and the dog gets to know you really well, because even a child, we only raise a child for 17 or 18 years, and then they're on their own. But have that, you know, that connection, and such a loving connection, so unconditional love. I mean, it's like you said, it doesn't matter what you look like with the mascara and the, you know, the breath, and, you know, the bad mood, and the kicking furniture around. The dog is just waiting for you to get better, so you can go for a, you know, go for a car ride.
And I think there's a focus too. I mean, they, you know, when we're raising children, they have so many things that they're interested in and wanting to be with their friends. Your pet, whether it's a cat, dog, horse, bird, you're just their whole world. And one of the things when I was writing the book, I was working with a writing coach, Jared Rosen from Dream Skull Publishing. And one of the things we talked about was the fact that there are a lot of people, especially through this whole COVID experience that we've all had, that are alone, or they're, you know, in downtown New York City and they're living in an apartment by themselves, albeit their pet. And that is their soulmate, and that is their best friend. And that's what I'm seeing. Marina had mentioned earlier when she was talking about my bio that I have created a pet soul grief and loss group on Facebook. And one of the things that I hear so much is, you know, I love the people around me, but my dog or my cat was my best friend. And I could tell that, you know, pet anything. And I felt this deep, visceral connection and the pain of the loss of that pet. And it's just heartbreaking to hear the stories, but intermixed in that was the joy of the lifetime and the journey that they spent together. So it's so important to help folks move from the devastation of the loss to remembering the joy and the experience and the journey they had with the pet, and maybe get them to a point where they can open up their hearts to a new best friend. Just as, you know, we have, in most cases, most human beings have multiple best friends in their lives, or people that we're really close to. So it just, for me, I felt like it was part of something, maybe part of my legacy, if you will, to help people be more joyful. And that's why I love the fact that, you know, we're talking on your in your group, the Hopenning, because it's about hope, to bring back that joy that you once felt with your pet, minus those, you know, feelings of loss and all that. You're still going to have those moments as part of the grieving process. I do the same thing. One of the stories in the book at the very beginning is the story of my two dogs, Moselle and Flash. And, you know, there are moments that I have when I remember the sweet, you know, their sweet little souls, and, you know, welcoming me home and all that. And I'll remember that even with, you know, my other dogs around me now. And it's sort of like bittersweet. I'm having those sweet memories, but there's still this little touch of, oh, they're not here, and wouldn't it be great to kiss them one last time or rub a belly one last time or what have you. And that's so normal. And so sometimes normalizing those feelings will also help somebody move through. Like, one example of that, and I know I'm just going on and on, but this is so important. I think there are some people that feel like if they don't have a long grieving process, it means that they didn't really love their pet at the level that they feel like they need to share with others. And in fact, I even struggled with that at one point because I was moving through my grief more quickly because of my spiritual beliefs. And so I had to sit back and I had to look at that. And I realized that the amount of grieving you do does not equate to the amount of love you had. And I had an experience with a lady that came to a dog show, and the story is in the book, where I didn't even realize she was struggling with that. And I mentioned that point to her, and she said, oh my God, that's exactly the way I was feeling. And once I normalized that for her, and I said, it doesn't mean because you're over the loss or over the feelings of grief associated with the loss that you loved her any less. It just means that you're naturally being able to move on. So maybe you can open your heart to another or just feel joy again. And she said, thank you so much. I really needed somebody to acknowledge that and validate that those were not connected. And it was a beautiful epiphany for her. And the very next day she came to the dog show and she said, you know what? I think I'm ready to get another pet. And I was just, my heart was bursting with joy. I mean, it's pretty unusual that it will happen that fast, but it was lovely. I think she was just ready. It had been about a year and she was ready to hear that and move on. So it was a lovely, lovely encounter with someone.
That's amazing. I actually have the book open on chapter 3 where you talk about the power of grief and how it doesn't have to be take a long time to get over that. So what I love about this book also, Julie, is that you gave room in the back for people to a lot of resources, which is amazing, but also to journal and to write down your thoughts as you go through each chapter. So I think that's absolutely brilliant. To the point, I said to Fran when we first discussed getting you on that, I almost feel like it's not just for pets, it's for people going through the loss of other people as well. So it's just such a brilliant book.
Thank you so much. I was hoping, quite honestly, when I started writing the book, it was strictly going to be a text. What I wanted it to be was a gift book, a gift to not only yourself if you needed it, but also a gift to give to somebody, because so often, well, first of all, people don't know what to say. They're very afraid, as you both know, being in the helping professions. People are so afraid that if they bring up a loss, whether it's a human being or a pet, it's going to remind the person of their loss, or they may become emotional. And as we all say, you're never just going to remind them. They always know that that's there. But the acknowledgement of it means so much. And it's okay if they become emotional or start crying or what have you, because that's part of it. And you just be there with them in that moment. But when I first started it, it wasn't going to be a workbook and a memory book. It was just going to be a text. And I thought, you know what? And I was going to have the workbook, memory book as a separate book. And I thought, you know what? This will be so much more helpful if I put it all together and have this be a comprehensive kind of like therapy within a book. Not to that point, but folks will say, I'll say start with the book, but if you need additional support, please go and see a professional. And most of the people in my grief group, quite a few of them have done that, have reached out to people that specialize in pet grief, or just go to a traditional therapist and talk about them, as long as they understand and they can really resonate with that grief, as we know not everybody does. But one of the things that I did in having it be a gift book is I wanted to put this frontispiece so that if somebody bought it for someone in lieu of a card, they could write a little inscription and maybe say a few thoughts. And then it's probably about the cost of 2 high-end Hallmark cards. And yet you're giving your friend or your loved one something that really can really help them through a very difficult time. So that was the important thing to me. And then this evolved into this, lovely comprehensive resource book, a workbook, and memory book. So I appreciate you acknowledging that and seeing that. And I just want to try to get the book into as many hands as possible who really need it. So I feel so honored that this came to me after meditation and I was able to do it and be able to help people do that. So
As you talk, Julie, I'm imagining it. I haven't had a physical copy of the book yet, but I plan on getting one. But as you describe the book and as Marina's described the book, in my mind, I can see that front page is going to be a picture of the dog, right? It's like where you, the scrapbook where you put the picture of the dog or the pet, whatever, and then you're highlighting and you're writing in the margins and you're like circling and then you're journaling, right? Because we all three of us were therapists. We know how powerful journaling is, like putting your hand to a pen or a pencil and writing out your thoughts, and then the tears come and they drop on the page and you draw a little picture or you do stuff. It's like the doodly thing that you just continue, and that's so emotionally healing, just that whole process of working through it slowly, gently, getting that art out in whatever way and form it is, whether it's the pictures, whether it's the words, whether it's circling and underlining and highlighting keywords. Journaling is so important in working through any feeling. With grief, it's just even so more powerful. And with this book, I can imagine myself being able to use that, and people that I love who have lost pets as well.
Oh, I appreciate you saying that too. I agree with you. I have books that have meant so much to me that I've done that with too. And I've never thought of putting the photo in that frontispiece. I love that idea. That is marvelous. And I'm going to mention that to some of the folks on the grief group, especially. That's a phenomenal idea. I just started thinking about all of the things that I went through. And what was really beautiful is as I was writing this book, I would start telling people, I'm writing this book on pet loss. And I have noticed that I have had some experiences with connection after death. It doesn't have to be a big woo-woo thing, but some people feel like it is kind of woo-woo. But there have been so many people that have told me some stories. And in the process of writing the book, when I mentioned it, and I said that this was going to be part of closer to the end of the book, because I wanted the first part of the book to be sort of resonating with most folks and their process of grief. And then telling them that if they feel ready and it does resonate with them, that there's the possibility of maybe some connection of some sort. And everybody's experience is different. Read on, and here are some ways that maybe you can strengthen those abilities to make some connections. I had so many folks, people that I never expected, that started telling me stories of feelings that they had, or maybe some visual connection, or hearing a tail, kind of like, hearing the wind move with the tail wagging. And a good friend of mine from work saying that she had gone to a vacation home, and this is also in the book, and feeling like a cat's paws going over she and her husband in bed, and there were no cats in the house, different things like that. So again, in the spirit of your community, the Hopenning, it's the hope that even if it's just a memory or a thought or a dream, that you are still going to be connected in some way, albeit not physical, of course, and then those are going to bring on feelings of joy about the relationship that you had. And so even after writing the book, I'm still having people, especially on the grief group, talk about some of these, do you think that this was my pet trying to tell me that she's okay or what have you? And I said, well, why not? Maybe, maybe not, but why not believe that? Because if that brings you joy to believe that that was an experience that you had with your animal and it brought you joy, that's all that it's about. So that's been incredibly rewarding. And, I've just loved all, hearing people's stories and having them willing to share them with me and everything. It makes you feel like that you've had a small impact on their life, moving them in a direction of joy. And again, that's kind of what I'm all about. I want to experience life with joy. I'm super excited about retirement, to be able to connect with more people through the book and do some really exciting things that I wanted to do that I haven't been able to do. So if I can help other people not wake up every morning crying and still being connected with those grief feelings, I want to do everything I can to assist them with that journey and help facilitate that.
It's amazing. Julie, one thought that I've been hoping to get to you today is the whole idea that we many times these days as pet owners, are the ones who have to make the decision at the end of their life to end it. And that's something I struggle with tremendously. I even have trouble killing spiders. So it's something, honestly, I cannot tell you how much I hope and pray that my dog and my cat would just go in their sleep, that I never have to make that decision, but it doesn't work like that these days.
That is a lot of what we talk about on the grief group. That's one of there are two big themes. One is the end of life decision. The other is the guilt associated with that decision. One of the things I talk about in the book is that any decision that you make is the right one. You just have to believe that, you know your pet better than anyone. I mean, I can tell when one of my pets are having an off day. You spend so much time, you have that deep connection, There are a couple of resources in the book, sort of an end of life scale, which can be helpful if somebody needs something that's a little bit more, if this, then this, if not this, then this. But I think it's more of a feeling and a connection with your pet. I have a couple of stories in there where I've said, I wait for the look. And I would have an experience with my pet who actually, gave me a look and let me know, Mom, it's time. I'm ready. But when you said that, Marina, about you so hope that your dog maybe goes naturally, I don't know if you remember the story of Flash, and I would sit on the couch every night and pet him, and I knew it was close to the end. And none of us want to have to make the decision to end our pet's life. And I would say to him every night, I love you. And, I know it's almost time. And honey, if you want to just go by yourself, I'm releasing you and you can do that. And hoping and praying that maybe he died naturally in his sleep the night before. And that didn't happen. But I completely understand that. I think most pet owners would really relate to that we don't want to feel like we've done something. But quite honestly, part of what I help facilitate with people is that in doing so, it's the most loving thing you can do for your pet. Because in most cases, and in almost all cases, there is some kind of discomfort or what have you close to the end. And the most loving thing you can do is end any kind of suffering and discomfort that your pet might have. And that's like your last loving gesture. And then, of course, if you can be there when it happens, it's like you're experiencing this together. And although painful, it's the last act of love and kindness, and you're together and you're doing this together and you're helping facilitate just transitioning to the next phase of life, which is, his spiritual or her spiritual existence. So that's what's helped gotten me through. And some folks are not ready to feel anything but guilt around that process, and that's what they have to go through. But if they're ready to see it from a different perspective and realizing that they're releasing the animal to their spiritual existence, I think that that's what gives you some comfort in the fact that it's not something you've done to them, you've released them with love. Does that make sense?
It's amazing because, two experiences we've had was a year apart exactly. In October 2015 was Celtic. And we had the conversation. He became incontinent. He was in a lot of pain. And then his last morning, he could not walk and he was crying in pain. My husband took the day off. He cried with the dog in his arms the whole day. And that evening we had the appointment. And we cried. Our daughter drove us. We cried all the way to the vet. And he had peanut butter and my husband was holding him. And tears were streaming down his face. And Celtic was licking the tears off his face.
Oh,
Celtic was
comforting him.
Yes. And so they put him to sleep, and when we held him, and I always think of the grace in that as well. Oh man, I didn't want to cry on this. Then a year later, my cat Dusty, Dusty was my companion through very, very troubling times in my life. He was always there. He was my constant. He was amazing. And I always had this desire that I don't want to go through that with him. And he was getting elderly, but the vet thought he was still in fantastic condition. And it was October 2016 when my son came home and I was busy working. And he said, Mom, Dusty just ran out the front door. And I said, oh, he'll come back. He always did. He would normally run out the front door, run to the back door, and want me to give him a treat to come back in the house. But I'm distracted. I'm working. And the next morning when I woke up and Khaleesi wanted to eat, it was like this click. That Dusty, who's so food motivated, is not here. And it was just my heart stopped. And I never saw him again. We have a lot of coyotes, owls, and cars. I don't know what happened with him. And the guilt of that is worse than the guilt of holding Celtic in his last moment.
No, I've heard that before also. I mean, it's such a heart-wrenching feeling and story. I've also heard with cats that they like to wander off and find a place and die in a place, maybe not even in their home. So, some of the things, of course, anything could have happened, but at the same time, he could have found a place that, he felt comfortable and just stayed there. But then when we don't know, our mind goes to all kinds of places and we feel terribly guilty. I think, there's a whole small chapter about guilt in the book. And as I said, that's, 1 and 2, the most talked about and discussed issues that I experienced with the grief group and also in the book, that, people just feel a tremendous amount of guilt for so many reasons. They've run over their animal by mistake, or, they just feel guilty about doing the euthanasia process itself, or, I let the dog out, or I let the cat out and another animal got to it and killed it, or what have you. And one of the things that we have to remember is, we loved our pet, and our intentions are always good and pure when it comes to the love and the care. And it's certainly a terrible accident that those things happen, but the pet doesn't, because there are a lot of people who come in. I hope the pet I hope my buddy will forgive me for what have you. And it's like, once they're in the spiritual realm, everything is forgiven and all love and all that anyway. But, nothing that has happened or you have done has been something that you intended, wanted, or so some of that is learning about self-forgiveness and letting go of the guilt so that you can let the natural grief process. And I've had to work with people with those feelings, and it's just heartbreaking. Not only are they going through grief, but then they're going through this secondary, very challenging emotion of guilt on top of that, feeling like, well, if I had done this, if I had done that. Well, we could say that about so many aspects of our life, that, if I had done this, this wouldn't have happened, or what have you. But we just have to accept what is, forgive ourselves, knowing that our pets would forgive us because they know we love them, and try our best to move on with help. The other thing I think that's important is also surrounding yourself with people that understand. What's really so tragic is folks that have such a deep connection to their animals and their pets, and then perhaps their spouse or their family or their friends don't feel that way, and they don't get that support. Oh, it was only your animal, it was only your pet, and we're like clutched, and are you kidding? That's like that was my child, that was my family member. So finding support with people that truly understand. So having that grief group and writing this book is like saying, okay, I'm one of those people. This is a group that understands. So a lot of the feedback that I'm getting through the group, especially from a lot of members, are, I'm so happy this group exists because you people truly understand. You're going through the same thing. You love like I love. And my husband thinks I should be over it already. It's been a week. And I think it's going to be years before I get over it. So that's just, for me, I feel very humbled that I can be a part of that for these folks, and have, the book as a tool and a resource for them to work through what they need to work through.
So Julie, Marina and I are rapid transformational therapists.
Mhm.
What do you believe? How can RTT help clients work through the grief of losing a pet?
Well, I think you're probably going to have to share a little bit. I'm not that familiar with RTT. However, Marina mentioned at the beginning of our talk that it had a lot to do with hypnosis. And so I think that in the hypnotic process and helping folks, it might get to, especially if somebody's going through guilt as associated with their grief, maybe get to where those things began, so that could be lifted from them viscerally and allow them to just have a natural grieving experience. Because in no way am I saying bypass the grief process, or let's just get over it really quickly. That's not natural, and that's not helpful, and it's not healthy. But I would assume that through that practice of RTT, they will get a better understanding of where some of these feelings have generated from, to be able to release them more quickly, and therefore be able to maybe consider other ideas associated with death and the grieving process. I mentioned Kubler-Ross, who was instrumental in grief, and talking about the fact that, everything dies and everybody dies. And yet there's sometimes that death is approached like, well, this person died, but this one didn't have to die. And so therefore it's sort of an unfair thing, when it's really about preparing yourself as much as you can. I mean, I've gone through the death of my mother, my sister, my husband, many pets, but realizing death is a natural part of life, and that it really isn't an unfair thing that it happened. It's just that it happened, and how can we, as people who love, get through it, as I've said, as gently as possible, so that we could get to a point where we can experience more joy. So you two are the experts at being practitioners of RTT. Am I kind of, do you feel like that resonates with what your experience with folks in RTT would be in terms of the grief process and guilt and those things?
Very much. Like,
Okay.
you at this point are a high school counselor, so you work with a variety of stuff, like, and Marina and I do too. We work with a variety of stuff, and really what it all boils down to is self-acceptance, self-forgiveness, self-love, getting to know ourselves better so that we can understand why we do the things we do and work backwards. I think of it as, skipping a rock on a pond.
Mhm.
So we skip the rock on the pond and goes, but for why we are in a situation we are right now, let's go back to where the pebble first landed, the first landing, and then work backwards to every time it hit and hit and hit and hit again until we start carrying all these stones with us, right, and weighing us down. And if we can go back to the beginning and find out the truth of what, or our own truth about what happened, and then we can start getting rid of our baggage, start getting rid of our stones in our backpack and carry a lighter load, and let the joy sign come through us. Let our joy shine.
That is awesome. So I think, somebody going through the grief of the loss of their pet, having the book, and also having a skilled practitioner of RTT, that would just accelerate that process even more, getting themselves from their pain to joy. I mean, it seems like it would be a very natural, putting those two modalities together would be very, very natural. And that's just great. So for me, working with kids, especially teenagers who I love, I always think of it as planting seeds. And I'll say to students, I have certain beliefs, and I'm going to throw a couple of things out. Anything doesn't resonate with you, just throw it out. But if something does resonate with you, then maybe do some self-reflection on that and see how you feel about that. It's the same thing with working with people with grief. There's some people that are going to be a little further along in certain spiritual beliefs than others. I even bring in, for kind of do it a little tongue in cheek, that some of you science folks who may think that this is all very woo-woo, as I mentioned before, a lot of this is based in science now. We talk about quantum physics, we talk about nothing that's created is destroyed, it just changes form. So if that's true scientifically, then all of us, humans and animals alike, we really don't die, we just change form. And the clue and the what we need to try to do as much as possible is to connect with that different form. And you just do what you feel the most comfortable with. If it's just, as I've mentioned before, just thinking of that person, or thinking of my pet that I loved, and thinking about all the fun times we had together, throwing the ball or going to a dog show, or just, those quiet moments when they're on your lap and you're petting them, that's the connection. Or, or more, you can seek the advice of an animal communicator, or look at trying some creative visualization types of things, or go to an RTT practitioner and learn a little bit about, learn a little bit more about you, so that you may be more open in the future for some of these other ideas, or not. So it's all what you feel most comfortable with.
It's amazing. So Julie, our time is running out, so any last words for our audience that you would like to share?
Yes, as a matter of fact, I wanted to share an opportunity with them. I mean, I have the Pet Soul book here. I think it's really great when I get a book that's signed by the author. And Fran, you said you didn't have a physical copy of the book, so when we talk off camera, I'll get your address. I'll be happy to send you a copy of the book signed. So if any of the people in the Hopenning want a book, they can just let me know, and maybe we can put something in the comments of the vlog, my email address. Just email me. I'll only charge them $15 for the book, which is a little bit less than Amazon. I'll pay the postage. I'll sign the book. And I'm also going to give them this really cool little Pet Soul book bookmark. And I also have something which is frameable, or they can just fold it up and put it in their wallet, but it's 10 Pet Soul daily reminders to help soothe your grief. And it's 10 little excerpts from the book that, you know, you're not necessarily going to be carrying the book around with you, but you could, I just dropped over a bottle of water, but you could have this in your wallet or your purse, or have it, you know, on your, you know, framed in a place in your study or your bedroom, and you can look over it and get just a little pick me up. And they have 10 little Pet Soul reminders. And so if they want to contact me through my email, or they can get to me through my website, they can do that. I'll be happy to send them a book.
That is fantastic. Thank you so much, Julie. I was going to ask you how they can get hold of the book, but now we know. I will definitely make sure to connect your email address to everybody.
Oh, that'll be great. And they can get it on Amazon too. In the Kindle version is available. And if you have Kindle Unlimited, it's free. So that's really cool too. So I just thank you both, Fran and Marina, so much for having me on the show. I love the group. It's all so positive, and I think as we talk more and more about positive things, we draw more of those things to us. And thank you so much for the opportunity to be with you today. It's been absolutely wonderful.
Sure has. Thank you so much for joining us.
We're honored to have you, Julie. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
So Marina, for the month of May, we are changing directions, and we are going to be talking about women and all things about women, mothering, women's issues, female issues. We'll have a couple of guests on as well, and I'm really looking forward to the month of May. We've learned so much in April on grieving and loss in different ways and forms, and we're moving in a new direction, and mothering and things female. I'm looking forward to that as well.
That's amazing. Thank you, Fran. Yeah, next week I will be talking specifically about menopause and issues that comes with that emotionally, physically, and it's a complete interesting topic and very big part of my life right now. So I'm looking forward to that. So thank you everybody for joining us, and we will see you next week.
God bless.